Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. Previous talks in my occasional series on values includes one that invites viewers to place themselves on 12 continua, that was just yesterday, and 3 talks on values that are tough to live by. One on discipline, one on hard work, and one on responsibility. If you want to find them, just Google the word discipline and the word Nemko, workaholic and Nemko, and responsibility and Nemko, or duty and Nemko. Nemko. Anyway, today's talk aggregates those 3, discipline, hard work, and responsibility. I'm going to make the case for toughness, and it's potentially applicable in the widest range of contexts, as I'm going to try to demonstrate here. Of course, a strong argument can be made for erring toward kindness rather than toughness. For example, much of human failing isn't purely volitional, but at least is partly the result of such constraints as genetics, upbringing, peer influences, socioeconomics, physical health, mental health, and luck. As a result, it's understandable that kindness tends to be, at least among the educated, touted over toughness. We praise the gentle, the merciful, and the person who modulates their on-the-merits toughness in light of those factors I just mentioned. We may not always walk our talk, but kindness is what tends to get venerated. But perhaps underconsidered is whether being tough on others and on yourself can be a defensible foundational principle, that is, justice over mercy, prioritizing high standards, and imposing substantial consequences for unreasonably not meeting those standards. Well, here is an admittedly not dispositive case for that. This little talk's core purpose isn't to turn kindly viewers into tough guys. It's merely to encourage fuller dimensioned identification of your foundational principles, even principles that may go beyond conventional wisdom. Of course, toughness shouldn't descend to meanness or to excessive demands or punishments. But here are examples of where reasonable toughness's advantages may be underconsidered. First, let's talk about irresponsibility. Nearly everyone's disappointed, if not downright annoyed, when people don't respond to our email or our voicemail. Yeah, everyone's busy, and that unanswered message probably isn't the person's highest priority. But it is irresponsible and rude to not respond, say within 24 or at most 48 hours, if only to say, swamped, get back to you in a day or two. Of course, every situation's different, but it's often wise to be tough, although not mean with such a person. After, say, 48 hours, you might send an email with the subject line, following up. The text might simply read, I sent this 2 days ago and I'm disappointed you haven't responded. Not only does that make clear that you feel you deserve more respect, it sends a message to the person that may encourage more responsible behavior with you and with others. Another example of irresponsibility, a person promises you something, maybe by a certain date, but the person fails to keep the promise. Nice, so-called nice people tend to ignore that and say, for example, oh, it's okay, I understand. But both to prevent the person from doing it again with you and with others, you might say, for example, you promised you would do X by Y date. I'm disappointed. Is there anything I'm not understanding? One more example of irresponsibility, a domestic partner who refuses, if only passive-aggressively, to hold up his or her half of what the partnership requires: income, parenting, and other domestic responsibilities. The partner who accepts weak excuses pays too big a price to his or her own life and reinforces the other partner's irresponsibility. Next example of where toughness should more often be considered is light sentencing. We denigrate judges who mete out maximum sentences as hanging judges. Well, too often that denigration insufficiently considers the tough judge's benefits to society. Given the 68% 3-year recidivism rate, keeping convicts off the street longer can save lives, whether literally from violent crime, maiming from robberies and battery, financial crimes, which can dramatically affect people's financial lives, or selling dangerous drugs. Can a community be better off when a meth dealer is back on the streets sooner? The next example of where toughness might well apply is laissez-faire parenting. Of course, as I've often said, expert consensus is that corporal punishment is always wrong. And some kids are so compliant by nature that being tough on them is foolish. But for the average, and especially for the dangerously misbehaving child, firm limits with consequences is usually a wise antidote to likely metastasizing bad behavior. Most obvious is the teen who's abusing drugs. The wise parent is tough. Of course, the foundation should be set by trying to understand the basis for the abuse. For example, the teen feeling that his or her life isn't worth caring about, and then you're trying to help. Also foundational is openly discussing your hopes and fears for your child. But that usually needs to be supplemented by toughness, setting firm limits, including random drug testing, firmly enforced restrictions for bad behavior, and rewards for good. Another example of where toughness may well be underappreciated is consequences for poor performance. Whether it's a family member, a coworker, a supervisee, or a home repairer, kind forgiveness may well encourage future bad behavior. Sure, there are times to let things slide, but often it's wise to express disappointment in a person's shoddy work. And in the case of a supervisee, after just a modest amount of chances to improve, to terminate the person. The chances of improvement are usually smaller than of finding a more worthy replacement. And when you do replace the person, everyone benefits. The more worthy person who gets hired, the coworkers who get to work with him or her, and the customers who, if only as an indirect result, get a better product or service. Even the terminated person benefits. Letting him or her slide only reinforces their bad behavior and discourages the person from finding better suited work. Another example of lack of consequences for poor behavior where toughness is needed is grade inflation, which has dramatically accelerated in recent decades. That may be a root cause of procrastination. The student waits to study or to write the paper until the last minute and lo and behold, still gets a good grade, and so subsequently waits until the adrenaline-fueled last minute. Soon, slipshod, last-minute work becomes the person's norm, and he or she suffers the professional and personal toll of being a procrastinator. Another example where more toughness may be underappreciated is dishonesty. We live in a marketing-laden world in which hype, manipulation, deception, and withholding of material minuses are common. Maybe that's one reason we seem to be accepting a larger degree of dishonesty. For example, a salesperson hypes a product, you buy it and it doesn't live up to the hype. We too often just shrug. A tough but fair approach would be to return it along with a complaint about the salesperson to his or her boss. As with the previous examples, that's more likely to send a message that dishonesty will have consequences. To ignore it or is to reward the salesperson. The salesperson has unethically taken a step toward meeting a sales quota. More serious dishonesty is when romantic partners agree to be monogamous and one cheats. That's so prevalent as to be often seen as normative. But cheating's price is high. It's not just that it's sex, not just that the risk of sexually transmitted diseases. It's that an affair with another person reduces the partner's willingness to work on the relationship, indeed threatens the relationship's existence. I'm not saying that cheating is automatically a reason to end a relationship, but a tough response such as "end it or we're done" is often appropriate. Even far less consequential dishonesty often shouldn't be tolerated lest it continue or worsen. I recall a guy who regularly showed up for pickup basketball, and he would often insist that his team's score was higher than it actually was. And worse and dangerous, he would deliberately foul players, knowing that in street yard basketball there's no penalty, that is, free throws for fouling. I want to be honest with you. Looking back, I wish I had been tough on him, early on, nipping the problem in the bud. I should have pulled him aside, called him on it, and told him that if it continued, I'd embarrass him by calling him out in front of all the players. But I kept quiet and just chalked it up to being just one of life's small iniquities. Again, of course, undue toughness is as indefensible as undue laxity. But because society, especially educated society, tends to, at least publicly, venerate kindness over toughness, I've given you this little talk to offer a counterpoint. So, do you want, at least in one context, to be tougher? In any event, I do thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko. I welcome your giving this a thumbs up, and I accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to any comments you might have. I love it when you hit the share button below, because that enables my efforts to have broader impact. And I also love it, of course, if you subscribe to my channel. And in any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.